Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother Asarimhotep with the Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. I am here on this Saturday, April the 4th, during the great quarantine. Oh, I need to put my headphones on. Should have did that first. And okay, testing. I'm gonna try that again. Oh, I sound bad. Here we go. Testing. I don't know what is going on. Is the static still bad? Good and clear. Okay. Don't know what happened there, but Sister Monica says that she thought I was going to blow up. So hopefully we won't have too many issues. We've been having good shows without the static issues, and so we're gonna get started. So hold on, I got my aloe. This is pineapple. No, my bad. Mango aloe vera water. So and I froze it a little bit, so it's almost like a slushy slash cool cup for those old school people. Peace to everyone who is listening live and in the chat. Sorry I had to start a little later today. I was running a little late, but I'm glad that you are here and that y'all are ready to hear what I have to say concerning a very vital concept in African culture, and that is the religion. And I don't want to necessarily talk about, gods, goddesses, ancestors, rituals, or anything to that nature. What I'm going to deal with here is this thing called vitalism. And hold on one sec. I'm going to need to do something on this other computer. So y'all bear with me for a second as I'm still getting my stuff together, running a little late today. But it's going to be a good show. So this is probably one of those that you'll have to take notes. And hold on. So, okay, boom. So I got you there. Just making sure that I can see everything on the second computer. So, yeah, we're about to get started. So before I do that, I want to thank everyone for joining me. I want to always give a shout out to people in the chat. So peace to Sister Monica, Sister Maika, Brother Robert, Jeremy Kador, Ahmedix82, Womp Womp. We're going to figure out who Womp Womp is one of these days. Brian Hess, Juan Love, LB, Harold Richardson, Steezy Womeezy, Anointed Sadat Amin Ra. Let me see, Brother Kofi, Fitzroy Roberts, and I think that is it. Excuse me. And Don Williams in the building. Thank you all for and Sarah Jehuti too, Brother Chavez. Thank you all for joining. I know that you could be anywhere. Really, you can't, because probably most of y'all are on quarantine. But as usual, I know that y'all would you could be watching Netflix right now. They got School Days on Netflix right now. So y'all could be watching that, but y'all chose to be with your brother. So I appreciate it greatly. And so without further ado, I'm just going to get down to business. So I'm going to share my screen. Boom. I'm going to wait till I see. Just waiting to make sure that it comes up. I know there's a delay on this other computer, this other screen here. Jeremy says my last name has a long A sound. So Jeremy Cador. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Hold on, let me change. I want y'all to have the full screen. So boom. Alrighty. As soon as I get confirmation that it's all right on the other screen, I will continue. There we go. Alrighty. So, as I stated beforehand, we're going to be dealing with African religion. And so what I want to do is suggest that, or I'm giving you a name to replace the word religion in as referring to African, spiritual practices and the underlying philosophy of that. And so the name that I'm suggesting is this term here from the Kikongo speakers out of Congo. And the term is Kimoyo. And ki is a prefix to the root moyo. And we'll get into what that means in a second. But we're going to deal with the aspect of quote unquote African religions with this principle of vitality. And so, as usual, this is an exercise in Aaluja. What we're doing is going back, we're retracing our steps and restoring to our consciousness those aspects of ourself that have been damaged. And so, speaking of Aaluja, as usual, the word Aaluja is the title of a series of books I have written. And so we are on the second part in the series, and this is Aaluja Volume 2, Cyena-Ntu, Religion and Philosophy. And some of this stuff, which we'll be talking about today, is actually written in the text. And for those who have it, I would encourage you to, if you want to, get more into it, at least the aspects that are discussed in Cyena-Ntu, you can find some of this in chapter 12. And so if you haven't gotten this book, I encourage you to get it. It is going to be a collector's item and something you definitely want to have on the shelves. And so not only do I represent the Madhu Andela Institute, I also represent the Diopian Seals, which is a dedicated and strong group of scholars who are dedicated to solving the problems of African people, using the tools of, in the disciplines of STEM, of course, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, Egyptology, agriculture, and linguistics. So, and within that linguistics field, I'm gonna be introducing this synthesis of mathematics, linguistics, and logic. So that'll be in the near future. More on that to come. And so, of course, anytime that we're dealing with African people, we must ground ourselves in African culture and their worldview. And so, as argued in the text, Writing African History, Africanizing history must begin with a holistic attempt to understand the total worldview and cosmology of African peoples. Without looking at their oral history and the total context of their thought, we cannot understand the meaning that history has for them and why they have preserved it. And so, as I discussed on our conversation on yesterday, dealing with the cosmology and the cosmograms, a lot of the understanding of African people is connected to their worldview, of course, and I should say cosmological view, their cosmology. All of that is woven into the thought process and in the way that the people govern their societies. So we'll see a little bit more of that today in this discussion. So as Malidoma Somé said in his text, Healing Wisdom of Africa, cultures define themselves in terms of the ways their people perceive the cosmos. The cosmology I'm concerned with in this chapter is so essential to dagger of wisdom that little makes sense without it. The cosmology is the foundational model for life itself. So in order to really get at what African people are saying, go look at their worldview in terms of their relationship to the cosmos. That will tell you a lot. And so understanding the worldview of a people is the cornerstone for understanding their culture. So we'll be drawing a lot from Foucault tonight. And as I cited, from yesterday, from Dr. Williams A. Jones in his text, God in the Ghetto, one's theology, how I see God, determines one's anthropology, how I see humans, and one's anthropology then determines one's sociology, how I order my society. And as I stated yesterday, for the African people, the cosmos itself is God. Existence itself is God. Life itself is God. And so we can replace the word theology with one's cosmology. How one sees God, the universe, etc., determines how one's anthropology, how I see humans. And we'll see, how that plays out again today in this particular lecture. And one's anthropology then determines one's sociology, how I order my society. And so the beginnings of this conversation is going to come from Dr. Kimbwa Kia Bonseki Foucault, and from his PhD dissertation, Digging Up the Past, an approach to fundamental education, community, and development. And so this aspect of the conversation, which I am citing from Dr. Foucault, actually, to me, best explains the fundamental nature and psychology and principal values of African religions. And so I'm going to take a leap here, which I normally don't do, but because I've studied so well African religions and cultures, I can say that this is the predominant view across the African spectrum. Not to say that there's anyone who thinks differently, but the dominant worldview is exactly what you see, what you're going to see in terms of the citation from this his PhD dissertation. And I think that he articulates it so well that it is, saying it's worth exploring in depth. So remember, this is from his PhD dissertation. And a matter of fact, because it's kind of hard to get, I will give the listeners this text. And matter of fact, instead of me, y'all emailing me for the text, I am going to upload the text to my website, the same way I did the cosmograms on yesterday's episode. And I am going to post the link in the description. So it will be available on tomorrow, April the 5th. So Sunday, April 5th in the morning, it will be up there. So I'm gonna try to do it, immediately after the program tonight, but definitely by Sunday morning, April the 5th, I will put Dr. Fukiao's PhD dissertation. And so of course I cite this text in chapter 12 of Aaluja volume 2. So what I'm reading here, it will be on, for those who have it, Aaluja volume 2, that is, already. It's in chapter 12, the last 2 pages of the text. So give me a second real quick. Okay. Now, the Bantu concept of God is a principle of Kalunga, therefore welded opposite forces, positive and negative in one. I won't read the Kikongo right there. The Muntu, meaning the human being himself, is seen in terms of these paired forces. Inkwa Luzungu, he is a being of paired organic forces. Some are said Lumoso or Lukinto, left or female, and another Lunene or Lubakala, right or male, because all beings are resultant of the Kalunga, the complete forces made up of welded opposite, forces of Kala and Luvimba, positive and negative in one. So he's saying here that this God entity, this God principle, is a complete entity, and we'll see how all this plays out. This word here, Kalunga, is cognate with the word Ra in ancient Egyptian, and the Bakongo people still worship Ra under the more ancient pronunciation of the name. And so that will be the focus of another text when I'm dealing with Ra and Ma'at as the same deity. But, to understand what he means by opposite welded forces, imagine, for example, a coin. A coin has 2 sides, a head or a tail. You cannot separate the coin, the heads or the tails from the coin. They are welded together to be one entity. And so what they're saying here is that God is force, God is life itself. And it is the welding of these principles of opposites. And so whether, we're talking about life or death, we're talking about masculine or feminine, we're talking about up, down, warm or hot, cold, whatever it is, those underlying principles, those opposing principles are one and the same in terms of the makeup of the God principle, according to Fukiao. So, and that he is forces, power itself. We continue. As a matter of fact, the whole African religion, as one can see in their aspect among the Bantu people, have 2 key words beside Nzambi or Kalunga. These are Nzambi or Kalunga are just 2 different titles for the same concept of God. And matter of fact, this is Nzambi is cognate with the word Amen, and Kalunga is the cognate of the word Ra. And just like how you have Amen Ra in the ancient Egyptian worldview, In the Congo, they also have Nzambi Kalunga, Amen Ra. And I discussed that in chapter 1. No, excuse me, in the introduction in Aaluja volume 2. So if you just go there, so that's just a side conversation. So these words are Ngolo, which is power or energy and force, and Moyo and force again. These are really kind of two different words that in reality kind of almost represent the same thing. But this word Ngolo becomes a word for God itself too. So you can say Ngolo, Ngola, Ngole, and it becomes a word for God. In Kikongo. So in Moyo, force, energy, or dynamism, and life vitality. So I haven't read the matching. So Moyo is a word meaning life and vitality among the Kikongo speakers. It is here that the African religions and their aspect among the Bantu find the roots of their dynamism and their wholeness. Instead of searching the sense and meaning of the Bantu aspects of African religions on this basis, the Eurocentrist scholars found it not only important, but imperative for their imperialistic intentions to label Bantu religion on the ground of very negative basis. Yet this basis does not have tracks in the Bantu languages. They labeled these people animist and their religion animism. And I forgot to add the definition of that. So I'm just going to go to this other computer and I'm going to read from the online etymological dictionary the word animism. And so the word animism is a noun meaning an attribution of living souls to inanimate objects. And this is reintroduced by English anthropologist Sir Edward Burnett Taylor, who defined it as the theory of universal animation of nature, from anima, life, breath, soul, from Proto-Indo-European ane, meaning to breathe. And so, but the sense in which he defines animism has to deal with the relationship to animals. And so we'll read that right here. So he says the word itself related to animal, says clearly what these scholars had in mind about African religion in general and about its aspects among the Bantu people in particular. Bantu religion is not animism or animalism. Neither are the Bantu animists or animalists. The Bantu people are vitalists. This is accepting themselves as well as everything in the universe as part of ki.moyo, the principle of life in its wholeness. Their religion deals principally with force and vitality. So I hope this is clear exactly what he is saying. And so, when a lot of these anthropologists came into Africa in the early periods, they would see these animal representations all across Africa, and those being associated with spirit and deity. And so we know this very well, for example, in ancient Kemet. So when you think about Heru, Set, Jehuti, et cetera, they're all represented in some form or fashion by some kind of animal. And so they use this term animism to reflect the animal representations of concepts in African religions. And then some use it in the more linguistic sense in terms of there being a spirit in inanimate things or a soul in inanimate things. And so that's almost along the line, but it quite misses the mark of exactly what is going on in these African traditions. And so this is why we're reading this and getting some clarity from an initiated scholar in African wisdom traditions. And so I'll read this last part again. The Bantu people are vitalists. This is accepting themselves as well as everything in the universe as part of ki.moyo, the principle of life in its wholeness. Their religion deals principally with force and vitality. So remember that God itself is the principle is the completely complete being, the Kalunga. He is the welded forces. And this is an infinite being. And so nothing can exist outside of the infinity. The infinity is existence. It is the cosmos itself. And so, as he's saying here, the Bantu people are vitalists. This is accepting themselves as well as everything in the universe as part of ki.moyo, the principle of life in its wholeness. Their religion deals principally with force and vitality. So we are just manifestations. Everything is a manifestation of these particular forces and vitalistic principles. And so he restates a little bit of this in his text, Self-Healing Power and Therapy from 2003, page 115. He says, Moyo, according to the ancient schools of Africa, means vital power. Moyo is what is, the vitality of life. It is the key word to Kibantu, the Bantu way of life, their philosophy. Kimoyo vitalism is their religion, and it is not animism. So we operate from the central principle that everything is alive. Everything is seeping with vitalism, with moyo. And life, as we will see, is this exchange, this dance with this vitality in forces, in the study of these forces. And so the word moyo itself, as defined in Kikongo, as we heard, is life, and vitality. And so you see some cognates in a few African languages. So in Chiluba, it's the word moyo, which means heart, life, spirit, soul, courage, will, desire, inclination, feeling, mood, thought, greeting, and hello. In isiZulu, umoya, air, spirit, soul, wind, breath. In Asante tree, mogia, blood. And Chiluba has a different variant, mungi, heart. And so the concrete word literally comes from heart. And from this principle of the heart, in African languages, the heart, the lungs, the liver are usually the same word in historic times, and they all refer to the essential vitalistic parts of the body. So if something happens to your liver, if something happens to your lungs, if something happens to your heart, you are gone. You can cut your foot off, you can cut your legs off, you can cut your arms off, but something happens to your heart, liver, or your lungs, you are gone. And so these are essential aspects of the body. These are the areas that hold life together. And so from that essential concept, do you get these other derived meanings from a literal word meaning heart? And so it's more complete in Chiluba, heart, life, spirit, soul, courage. Like we say, you have to have heart. It is we're saying the same thing: courage, will, and desire. And since it's so connected to your lungs, this is where you get air and spirit from. And even words for blood is words for spirit in African languages. So this is an essential idea to keep in mind. So this vitality, talking about the lifeblood, the spirit of things, the essential essence, everything has, emerges from these principles. So the vitality, we're going to define vitality right now. So vitality, it comes from Latin, vitalitatum, and I'm saying this all wrong. Vitalitas, vital force, life, from vitalis, pertaining to life. And so see vital. And so we look at vital. Vital, of or manifesting life, from Latin vitalis, of or belonging to life, from vita, life. So y'all know that song, Living La Vida Loca, and which is strange because you're saying the word living and then you say vita, and then of course loca is crazy in Spanish, so living a crazy life. But that's what that word is, vita, saying life, and it's related to vivere, to live, from Proto-Indo-European root gue, to live. And so what is interesting about this word here, gue, is that this is an African word, and you find it in African languages. But this is just another source besides the online etymological dictionary that talks about the word life in Proto-Indo-European. So we can see this verb to live is gue, and it has this laryngeal at the end here. And so vivo, live, Lithuanian, jiju, healthy, zivo, life, Yevaiti, lives, Sanskrit, Yevati, lives, Greek, zo, live, or live. As a matter of fact, I think for those who are Haitian and they say that word zo all the time, that actually comes from Greek. There's a song, I forgot the cat's name out in Florida, as I'm a zo, got it tatted on my chest now, I'm a zo. So anyway, so even New English, even the word quick comes from this root. And so it's talking about vitalism, vital functions. So again, I just wanted to highlight this root here, this Proto-Indo-European root gue. And so the cognates in Africa, you find one in ancient Egyptian, and it's the very word unk, life. And so this word unk, or we say unk, the root is this k sound here. And, we see these different variations: life, live, life, be alive, unku or unqui, the living, unk, person, inhabitant, citizen, living one, unku, person, citizen, living one. So just different ways to spell these forms of this term. And so we find this all across, Africa in terms of this root. And so in Proto-Bantu, the root is kua, inhabitant or person of. And again, in Chicam or Egyptian, it's unk, living person, inhabitant, member of the group, or soldier, life or man. In Tree is Inkwa or Akua, life. In Douala Bantu is Ong in Cameroon, life. In Kikongo, Zingu, life. Kikongo, Inkwa, self. And it also just means life or man. Collagen, K, self. Ki, self. And in Songo, Ko, male or spouse. And so this principle of life, in Gue, you can see Anubis here. I forgot what king this is. I think it's Amenhotep II or something like that. But you see him putting the unk to the nose of the king here, transferring life to him, this breath of life. But that word Gue, where you get vitalism from, is an actual African word. And so we're going to continue with Fukiao. And so he says, a religion that does not believe in any physical being. Remember what, let's read this so it sounds more continuous. So he says the Bantu people are vitalists. This is accepting themselves as well as everything in the universe as part of ki.moyo, the principle of life in its wholeness. Their religion deals principally with force and vitality. And so it is a religion that does not believe in any physical being, but in Ngolo Ye-moyo, Mudingo Dingo, force and life through Dingo Dingo. Dingo Dingo is a word meaning how should I say? It's a word meaning change, the principle of continuous change. Dingo Dingo. And so thank you, everything is everything, for your contribution and donation. It is very, very much appreciated. And so when you're saying is force in life through Dingo Dingo or through evolution, the natural way of life and change. So Dingo Dingo has to deal with change. This religion can be called Dynamo-vitalism or Kimoyo. The religion itself is not a question of belief. It is a question of ta dingo dingo ye kala mu dingo dingo, participating in dingo dingo, in evolution of change and being part of the change. The Muntu sees his religion like dancing. Dancing is not a question of belief. It is a question of participating and of being part of the dance. This is why every Muntu African dances exactly the same manner he talks and exalts his Ngolo and Moyo, the key words of his religion of force and vitality, into which in Zambi God is not a physical being of male or female gender, but a Kalunga, the principle of opposite welded forces in one, a principle that one can understand because inseparable with matter only in being part of the motion through the Dingo Dingo itself. And so he's given us a lot, and you're going to have to go back and really kind of read this on your own, because I know I'm kind of reading fast. But and again, you can take your time if you have my book already, and then again, it's dealing with pages 114 to 116. I'll be giving you his dissertation. You can read it yourself. But he's saying here again that God is inseparable with matter, and matter has these characteristics, these principles, these properties of opposite forces in one. And so this is the large entity that represents all of this. And it's about the dance, as I mentioned earlier. It's about engaging the vitality, understanding the vitality and the principal forces. And so this is the whole Ntu religion, which is permeates all through Africa. So, the whole book of Aaluja Volume 2 is dealing with this, Cyena-Ntu, religion and philosophy. And matter of fact, I didn't quote this in the book. I mean, I didn't quote this in the citation, but for those of you who have my book, you can read along with me when I cite this person. Is Johannes Johns. And I want to say it's in chapter 12. And he's talking about Ntu. Here we go. So if you have my text and you have it with you and open, go to page 481. And so I'm going to give you a second to get it, because I know that there's going to be a time delay. So had to get something to drink real quick. So I should have put this in the slide, but I didn't. So I apologize for those who are listening, but I'm going to get started right now. And so I'm quoting from the book Muntu, African Culture and Western World, and the Western World from 1961. And it's written by John Hans John. And on page 101 of his text, page 481 of my text, we're talking about this concept of Ntu. So you can understand what I mean by Cyena-Ntu, religion and philosophy. Ntu is the universal force as such, which, however, never occurs apart from its manifestations. Muntu, Kintu, Hantu, and Kantu. Ntu is being itself, the cosmic universal forces. So we can see here that that Into is equivalent to Kalunga, as mentioned by Fukuyama. Into is being itself, the cosmic universal force, which only modern rationalizing thought can abstract from its manifestation. Into is the force in which being and beings coalesce. Into is that point from which creation flows. If we said that Into was a force manifesting itself in man, beast, thing, place, time, beauty, ugliness, laughter, tears, and so on, this statement would be false, for it would imply that Into was something independent beyond all those things. Into is what Muntu, Kintu, Hantu, and Kuntu are equally are. Force and matter are not being united in this conception. On the contrary, they have never been apart. Into expresses not the effect of these forces, but their being. But the forces act continually, and are constantly effective. Only if one could call a halt to the whole universe, if life suddenly stood still, would Into be revealed. And so Into has to deal with motion of matter and forces. And so he's saying here that this is essentially the God principle. And so it's these different names for the same fundamental concept. And so if you know, chapter 12 will bring a lot of this into clarity. So it's this vital principle, the way that, you know, like if you notice how African people dance and the kind of energy and spirit that they bring to everything, like we can't even do regular stuff regularly because our consciousness, you know, and our culture says that we have to infuse vitalism or spirit into everything that we do. So you can see that even in African American culture, to where, you know, on the left here you have, you know, of course, Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, and this is, you know, the quintessential essence of vitalism in the culture in terms of crunk, you know, saying music, so to speak. And, you know, we have Kings of Crunk on the right hand side. This is, of course, a genre of music coming out of ATL. But, you know, that spirit and vitalism is even in the crump dancing. So we can't even, you know, saying just dance in any kind of stiff way. Everything that we do has to be, you know, on that next level, you know. So this is why we have terms like crump or crunk and lit or on fire or blazing, you know, to describe the vitality that is in a situation, in a room, or in a person or whatnot, you know. And so we can't even preach the word of God without that vitalism. So you look at everyone else's religious traditions and their holy people are speaking. They're very calm and, you know, giving you the word or whatnot. But when these African folks, these black folks get a hold of the quote unquote word, you know, we got it. It becomes a live show, you know, because we can't, you know, you can just look at the picture and just tell somebody's going, you know, tell your neighbor, you know, that God has an anointing on your life. You can just see it. It's just present in everything that we do. And so we can't even be regular Hebrew Israelites, you know, on the corners preaching and whatnot. We got to bring fire to the Hebrew Israelite doctrine. We can't even be regular Jews. You don't see, quote unquote, the white Jews like this. But when black people believe that they Jews, They bring in, that sonic boom, saying, into the culture. So we can't even do ballet without adding that moyo, adding Kimoyo to it. And so if y'all know this trend that is going on, so that ballet is supposed to be very soft and elegant and smooth moving, and ballet can be very boring to watch. But as soon as Black sisters get a hold of ballet, they done changed the whole genre. And so now you have this hip lay. And so, it's kind of hard to capture in a still image, but look up hip lay and see how these sisters work. The ballet, how they've changed ballet and adding that spirit and that spice, to it. And so, these are the kinds of things that we have to, keep in mind when we're talking about Kimoyo and vitalism. It's not that it is simply a belief in spirited inanimate objects. Is that we're talking about the universe, and God itself, the divine, is a power. It is a vitalistic energy. And as a result, it expresses itself in the phenomenon that we see in the world. And so our actions, our thoughts, our beliefs is reflective of this concept of God itself being a vitalistic force, and we being manifestations of that vitalism. So, we can interchange in many respects this concept of vitalism, life, and spirit, because this is what we mean by spirit. It's just simply life, and to have life is to have motion. In other words, to have agency. And we'll get more on that in a little bit. But we're going to cite a few texts right here that talks about spirit being in everything. And so one text that I recommend everyone get is The Way of the Elders, West African Spirituality and Tradition. And so they start off the book with this quote: "Wherever there is sky, there is spirit." And so the sky is infinite. And so they're saying everywhere there is spirit. And so from the same text, they say every spirit belongs to spirit. Some of our spirits lived as human beings. Others are forces of nature. They respond to our petitions, though they also operate from their own agendas. If we are unaware of any spirits, they are better able to exercise their own will and roam about freely. The focus of our lives is how effectively to interact with the world of spirit. And, the world of spirit itself, it gets kind of confusing for us in the West, because we think of spirit as existing beyond our everyday experience. But those pieces of everyday experience, those phenomena, are spirit too. And human beings are spirit. And so it's the study, as I mentioned yesterday, this is why I said that everything is ultimately the study of Ntu and Ntuology, in terms of forces, the forces of being, and how they interact and cause phenomena to change, transform, and exist into the future. And so, just like in Zambi that we read from Fukuyama in the Congo, that same word is Inyama or Inyame in many languages and traditions in West Africa. So they're talking about this vital force, Inyame. So when you're talking about Inyame, it's a title, recognizing it as a force. And so Inyama is the energy that emanates from spirit and flows in Yame is the name of the deity, and Yama is the force itself. So different vowels at the end, but ultimately referring to the same thing. Is the energy that emanates from spirit and flows throughout the universe. It is the life force that links all of existence together: humans, animals, plants, and minerals. So you're seeing this Kimoyo here. They're not using the term because it's not in their language that way, but they're saying the essential things here. It's the life force that permeates and links all of existence together in humans, animals, plants, and minerals. The power of creation and destruction in Yama commands everything from bountiful harvests to droughts and plagues. It directs the twinkling stars and the rippling tides. This energy of the universe shapes nature into its many forms and yields to our handling of its power. So it's a life force. It's the force that causes things to move and change. And everything causes things to change. And there is this intangible thing that is the principle of life. And of course we'll get into what that principle of life in being is. And so we had this discussion a little bit on yesterday, and we're going to repeat it today. So Sabon Fusome, from the Dagara, Makeru, she passed a few years ago, of Burkina Faso. In her text, The Spirit of Intimacy, Ancient African Teachings and the Ways of Relationships, she states, when indigenous people talk about spirit, moyo, they are basically referring to the life force in everything. For instance, you might refer to the spirit in an animal, that is the life force in that animal, which can help us accomplish our life purpose and maintain our connection to the spirit world. The spirit world of a human being is the same way. In our tradition, each of us is seen as a spirit who has taken the form of a human in order to carry out a purpose. Spirit is the energy that helps us connect, that helps us see beyond our racially limited parameters, and also helps us in ritual in connecting with the ancestors. Ancestors are also referred to as spirits. Baba Ifa Karade, in the book The Handbook of Yoruba Religious Concepts, on page 21, he states, the Yoruba contend that the study of nature is foremost. Nature is viewed as the manifestation of Olodumare's essence through degrees of material substance. So think about this. He's saying Olodumare itself is nature. So nature is viewed as the manifestation of Olodumare's essence. So nature is Olodumare. Existence is God through degrees of material substance. That essence, translated as Ashe, is the inherent force of all creation. The emphasis of such study or worship is not centered on the physical object or tangible, but on the life force energy that brings about its form. The tangible object is but a symbol of the eternal existence that bore it. Olodumare, Olorun, is in all things, as the Ashe is the primal essence of all things. So what they're saying is that Ashe is the fundamental force from which emerges all phenomena. In quantum mechanics and astrophysics, these would be your four fundamental forces. That is the weak and strong nuclear forces, your electromagnetic force, and to an extent, gravity, which they have yet to kind of unify. But it's these forces, these there's a field. They all have fields. Matter of fact, you can even include the boson field. into this as well. And so for modern science, this Ashe manifests itself in terms of strong, and weak nuclear forces, and the force fields, the electromagnetic field, et cetera, et cetera. So these are principles of life from which that are foundational, which emerges all phenomena. So all phenomena are just agitations of these fields. And so for African people, in the Yoruba in particular, all phenomena that we witness in life is just an agitation of Ashe. Ashe is its own field. And so in the Congo, they say Moyo. Moyo is its own field. It's a foundational thing from which all things emerge. So Olodumare and Olorun is in all things, as the Ashe is the primal essence of all things. It is not the tree, the rock, the statue that African ancestors revere and worship, but the deep energy that brought about its being. So you can see this as kind of an extension of what Fukuyama said. So when the Eurocentrist scholars come and they're thinking that we're worshiping trees, we're worshiping rocks. No, we're trying to tap into the fundamental Ashe or Moyo of that thing that gives it its characteristics. And if we can tap into that, we can utilize that. In medicine, we would consider it the active ingredient. So if we can tap into the active ingredient of these phenomena, we can utilize it to our benefit. That's the belief of African people. So it's not a sense of worship in a traditional sense. And so these things have to be, clarified. So continuing on the Yoruba, Robert Ferris Thompson in Flash of the Spirit, he says, the Yoruba religion, the worship of various spirits under God, presents a limitless horizon of vivid moral beings, generous yet intimidating. They are messengers and embodiments of Ashe, spiritual command, the power to make things happen. So this is energy. So energy is a property of matter. And we're talking about the things that make things happen, the power to make things happen. That's work. So God's own, and so that means it's physical. So it's attached, a property of physical things. It's a property of matter. So remember, from the other citations, God and matter are not inseparable. And so, this is why we can tap into the matter to get the opposite welded force of the physical matter and get its active ingredient, its Ashe, its Moyo, its nature, so to speak, to respond in the way that we need to in this life. God's own enabling light rendered accessible to men and women. The supreme deity, God Almighty, is called in Yoruba Olorun, master of the skies. Olorun is neither male nor female, but a vital force. Kimoyo. In other words, Olorun is the supreme quintessence of Ashe. So Ashe is a Yoruba equivalent to ki.moyo, Chilubu-moyo, even though you really can't tell the difference in how I say it, but it's a W in that Moyo in Chiluba. Thank you to Ivan for your contribution. It is greatly appreciated. So, I'm putting this together. I'm showing you that this is the fundamental essence of the religion. And this, with this understanding in the relationship to the cosmos, you will see later on how this manifests in terms of the expectations of human relations. So yesterday we introduced a lot of the cosmograms that are found in many West African communities of wisdom. Excuse me. And so one of them, of course, is coming out of the Congo, as drawn and articulated by Fukuyama in these texts, and how it was the inspiration for the African American cosmological wheels that I also shared with you on yesterday. So we continue, within that same discussion. I know I read this yesterday, but I'm going to read this part again. So this is coming from Self-Healing Power and Therapy. He says, African society in general, and the Bantu in particular, perceive a human being as a power. So remember that the human being and everything is a manifestation of Ntu, that force. And it's a power. So human beings themselves are considered a power. We're considered a personification of vitality in life, a phenomenon of perpetual veneration from conception to death, a perceptual reality that cannot be denied, and more so after death, because the physical reality becomes a spiritually living reality in words, deeds, experience, image, and an invisible radiating sun. As such, a pregnant woman is perceived as the carrier of a new and holy package full of power and energy, a continuation genetically of old radiations under new form. The entire community awaits for the coming of the package, the infant or the Muntu human being to be born. The birth of a child is perceived as the rising of a living sun. In the upper world, Kuinseki, the death of a human being is perceived as the setting of a living sun. In the lower world, Kuimpemba, the spiritual world or world of the ancestors, the community of the dead, emphasis mind. And so what he's saying here in addition is that we are a manifestation of power from the divine itself. And to represent that power, the most powerful thing that we can think of, that we can relate to in our everyday experience, is the sun. And so the sun becomes equivalent to the human being. So the human being is a living sun. And so as the sun rises and sets, that becomes a metaphor for as a human being is born, lives, and eventually dies. And so it's a living energy, a living power. So that's what a human being is. So we're seeing here that this principle of Kimoyo, of vitality, manifests itself in the culture and is associated with the living person himself as the embodiment of Kimoyo, of vitalism. And we have a representation of the sun as equivalent to a human being himself. And so we keep saying this principle of being in life, but what do we mean by that? And so as read before, Mogobe B. Ramosi out of South Africa, and talking about Ubuntu, he says epistemologically, being or Ntu is conceived as a perpetual and universal movement of the sharing and exchange of the forces of life. The African philosophic conception of the universe is, to borrow from the Greek, pantheiric. On this view, order cannot be once established and fixed for all time. Why? Because the universe itself is in perpetual motion. There's no such thing as creation in the African context. There's only evolution and change. In the Abrahamic tradition, God creates the universe, and then as a separate from him, as a separate entity from him, and then he in turn finishes all creation. This is why a lot of these religious fanatics coming out of Islam and Christianity and Judaism have a problem with the theory of evolution, because evolution, as far as biology in terms of Earth is concerned, is ultimately saying that phenomena is continuing to evolve. In other words, there's no such thing as creation. Creation isn't done. That we're constantly creating. And so when it comes to the African context, it is not really wise to say the creation, like in zombie created in terms of creation. You talk about the creating, the evolutions, the perpetual motion and change. And so it is that perpetual motion and change that is life. That is the principle of life in being. Something has being because he has motion. There's nothing in the universe that is static and still. So if for those of you who want to go back to the Kabbalah, days and this and that principle, saying of like rhythm and motion, that everything has its ebb and flow and that everything is in motion. There's no such thing as static, because some aspect, even if I'm sitting still in my chair, there are atoms moving, there's blood circulating in motion. There are cells growing and dying. There's hair growing. There's skin shedding and being renewed as I'm sitting here still. And so even if I'm sitting here still on my chair, the earth itself is rotating. And not only is the earth rotating with me on it, so basically I'm going in a circle, I'm also moving around the sun. And the sun itself is moving, and all other planets in a spiral in the galaxy. And the galaxy itself is moving around other galaxies around in the universe. And the universe itself is spinning. And so everything is in constant motion. And so that is the principle of life. And so the forces of life are those forces that cause phenomena to change and move in a given direction. So when we talk about this vital force in being, it's this principle of movement. And so when we're talking about life, life is the interaction and the exchange of these principles of life in motion. These forces of life that we share and exchange, that is ultimately Ma'at. And so this is the cosmogram representation coming out of Foucault's book. I altered it slightly. I've actually combined several of his graphs together. But all of them, have this kind of representation. So you see this principle of life, in terms of conceptualization, V1, birth, V2, maturity, V3, and death in V4. And remember that this is Kalunga, the opposite wielded forces. So this is why we have a positive sign here, because you're coming into being, your life, and you're growing. On your decline is negative. This is why the negative side. But when you come into the spiritual world, it's a coming into being there. And then it's a death in the spiritual world to come into the physical world. That's why it's a negative sign here. And so you see this arrow going in terms of the direction of the movement here. But these could deal with any kind of forces or whatnot. It's this interaction of these opposites wielded forces in perpetual motion. This is the essence of this drawing here. And so this is Ma'at, as I discussed in Aaluja Volume 2, and as I discussed in the conversation on yesterday. This is the graphical representation of Ma'at in the Congo. And it is called by the same root as Ma'at. It doesn't seem like it, but believe me, it is. And so I discussed that in chapter 1 of Aaluja Volume 2. So within this concept of the exchange of life forces and the circularity and the flow of energy, so to speak, comes this notion of health. And so as Foucault informs us, to be in good health for the Bantu in their traditional concept of Vimpi, health is to be in possession of a sufficient amount of Ngolo, energy, body electricity. So you have to have, again, the religion is about energy and the ebb and flow of energy and how to dance with the ebb and flow of energy of life. is to be in possession of a sufficient amount of ingolo energy in one's body for the betterment of its functioning. It is to be in total harmony, balance, not only with the global unity of the social body of the community, the macrocosm, but also with the wholeness of the universe. Excuse me, the microcosm with the wholeness of the universe, the macrocosm. On the contrary, to be sick is to lose or be in the process of losing one's ingolo. So seeing one's ingolo diminish. This is kuluka ngolo. It is to be in total or partial chaos, conflict with the social body will of the community, or with the global unit of the wholeness of the universe. In other words, to be sick is to run out of the dingo of life. Remember that word dingo. It is a word meaning change in motion. So something that is interrupts the system and the flow of life force and energy and change is a disruption to the system and the diminishing of the energy. And so that's sickness. And so he represents this flow of energy again in terms of a spiral or a circle. And so this is a chain you can see. And so this graph actually comes from the dissertation. So you'll see this in the dissertation. So the Bantu people see the health of an individual in the way that they see a pearl in a necklace or a link in a chain. When each element occupies perfectly its place, the whole unit society remains a dingo in a perfect and well-balanced motion. So that's what this is. So remember, this graph here is a 2D representation of the dingo of life. A harmonious motion, everything fitting together and flowing. Right now, the United States is in a sickness, not only in terms of the personal human beings because of the coronavirus, but the whole society itself, the flow, the ebb and flow of currency, the energy of the society has been halted in many sectors. And so the society is sick right now, not only on a physical level, but on an economic level. And so the dingo has been interrupted in the world as we know it. And so in this representation, but when a soul element individual of the unit, the social will loses its place, becomes sick in the normal motion of dingo, the balance of the unit, the social body is also destroyed. Again, this is about Ma'at. And so Ma'at is talking about, again, the exchange, the ebb and flow and the exchange of life forces. When something interrupts the normal flow of change of the life forces, you know, the chain is broken and the wheel becomes chaotic. And so you have to mend this wheel. We have to put the chain back together again. And so continuing, Ramose states, African philosophy is consistent with this philosophic position that motion is the principle of being. According to this understanding, the condition of being with regard to every entity means that to be is to be in a condition of ness. Whatever is perceived as a whole is always a wholeness in the sense that it exists or persists towards that which is yet to be, because this is the characteristic of every existing entity. Being or into is to be understood always as a wholeness. Again, you keep seeing these common themes show up in these articulations of African philosophy and religion. We're talking about the flow of life forces in energy. It is motion. Motion is being in existence. And so anything that stops the motion is death. And so all of this stuff has to be balanced in a unique way in order for life to exist. And so since God itself is the universe and matter, God itself is also time. So space and time is God in the African traditions. That is the whole focus of chapter 12 of Aaluja, volume 2. And so, as I stated before, the ancient Egyptians represented this concept as ma'at or merakit, which means truth, justice, straightness, balance, and order. So everything is in order and balance when that flow, the train is running and is on time to its destination. But if something happens to the wheels, or something on the train, it can't move. And so we're out of balance. We're out of order. And so, as I stated before, ma'at, the root of the word ma'at is this right here, which is rek or rik, ram. There's various different ways that you could pronounce this. And M is a prefix and T is a suffix to this root here. And it is this root here that it becomes the word Ra, sun. And I have a whole book coming out on this. So the details and the proof is coming. So just trust me for now that they are the same deity. One's the feminine aspect of it, and one is the physical aspect of it. I mean, the masculine aspect of it. And so this Ra in Africa is pronounced Kalunga, Karunga, Mulungu, Murungu, Kalanga, Itango, Katanga, Intangu, Ilanga. These are the manifestations of this term. And so in the Congo, remember that God is a principle of Kalunga. And when you read Foucault's work, because Foucault is not a linguist, he doesn't know about the concept of paronymy and how all of these associations with Kalunga or God are actually the result of roots in the Kikongo language that sound alike. And so, hold on. So this is, from the Congo language. So the word lunga is, there's several different lungas in the Kikongo language. And so, and in Bantu in general. So lunga, the first definition, to come to amount to be complete. That's why he says Kalunga is a completely complete being in number and quantity, to be exact, just, accurate, right. That is the definition of ma'at, because that is the root, lunga, here of ma'at. So this is why I'm saying that when you look at this is ma'at. Jikinga and Dingo Dingo, all of this is ma'at in Congo. This is the graphical representation of this more artistic personification of ma'at. So in the Congo, they rather represent this concept in a more graphical cosmogram, but the Egyptians rather represent this concept in a personification of a woman, with wings stretched out. So we're getting back here. So to be exact, just, accurate, right, perfect, expire, fulfill, legally right, all come, all to hand, all present. This word is also used of the triumph of might over right, so that to overcome or conquer in a fight is spoken of as lunga or ma'at, whether the right was on the winning side or not, hence to win, to cause, palaver, to prove oneself right in a palaver, a master, to overcome, beat, or defeat. This is why, it is ma'at, or to be makheru in ancient Egyptian, is to overcome when your heart is being weighed on the balance. You have defeated, the forces of evil and death, and you have been granted, immortal life, according to the tradition. So again, lunga, perfect, complete. Lunga, to mind, to take care of, to keep, to watch, to look after, to protect, to guard. Lunga, a smithy, forge, foundry, gale, blast, a strong wind. So Kalunga in the Kikongo tradition is also represented by a fire force. And we know why Kalunga is represented as a fire force. And that's because of the root Lunga having to deal with fire in a smithy, a forge, etc. And it's from this forge, from this fire, this sun, from which all creation emerges. And so, it's going to get deep. I discussed some of this already in Aaluja Volume 2, but there's going to be a text dedicated to Ma'at and Ra as being the same entity, and how Ra and Ma'at is manifested in Bantu. So that should be coming up in about a year or so. So to assemble, to gather, Langa Lakesa, Lungana, to gather together, to assemble. And so this is having to deal with to put in order. Lungalala, to be wary, cautious, prudent, skillful, far-seeing, discreet, judicious, shrewd, sly, cunning, crafty, prudence, discretion, wisdom, shrewdness. Lungalua, to fill, to overflow, heap. Kalunga, ocean. Lunga, light, or make a blow of fire. Again, this is why it's the association, saying with Ra. We'll get into all the details. There's a lot more to it. And so, this is Ma'at represented in Congo in terms of their graphical representation of judgment. And so I'll discuss this at a different time and part of the ancestralization. But the word Lunga also means balance, Kaninga. And so this is what we're dealing with here in terms of the balance. So when you see the scales of Ma'at in ancient Kemet, you're looking at this here. So Kaninga, balance, Lunga. And thank you, Dr. Melba Ortiz, for your contribution. It is greatly appreciated. So Kaninga, dealing with balance. Here again, this is part of the ancestralization or ritual. And you don't even have to wait for me to articulate this in the book. Fukiao, matter of fact, is probably the only lecture that has been uploaded to YouTube from Fukiao before he passed. Look up that lecture. He's speaking in New York at this kind of arts museum or something like that. I forgot the name of it. And so he this is where I get this drawing from. So I recreated the drawing from his lecture and synthesized this with some other stuff from his works. And so we'll get into that. And so this concept of Lunga in terms of joining and tying. So in Christopher Ayres' book, The Civilization of Africa from 2002, he talks about Lungu, for example. The people in such a village saw themselves as part of a mutually recognized wider grouping of many villages, which they called Lungu. This word derives from a Proto-Bantu verb lung, meaning to join by tying. The metaphor encoded in the word shows that even though the earliest Bantu people based their rights in the local village community on kinship, they saw their wider society or ethnicity as joining together of separate kin groups, as something mutually entered to rather than imposed by birth. And this is important. Again, this root lung is the root to how we're saying Ma'at, but it's not Ma'at. It's really Mulungu or Mulunguit. And so do you have a word Mulungu or Ma meaning village in the Egyptian language? And so it's the same word, and it comes from, you'll notice that there's a word Ma meaning to tie or a word Ma meaning rope. And so paronymy is at play here. And so what you're seeing, and I can't really wait to release the text, is that this word Kinga, this is the original version of the word. This K in the word Jikinga is a word that is a sound that palatalized and ultimately came D in T, which became L in this variation of word. But this word kinga having to deal with to tie and to put into order, to organize, and also to mold. And so what they're talking about is this organization of the life forces and the exchange of life forces and perpetual motion and evolution or whatnot. And so this Congo cosmology gets deep. And so let me continue, past this. And so, I didn't even have to go all the way up there. So this is the Congo. So I'm trying to kind of stamper into your mind, into your consciousness, the relationship between all of these concepts. And so these ancient ideas are still alive and have been advanced in these modern African cultures and languages. And so, but it's in order to really understand the ancient Egyptian, it is my argument that you have to understand these modern representations, because they put the meat on the bones of what you see in ancient Kemet. And so remember that the Kimoyo is the principle of life and vitality. And as Foucault mentioned, that this principle of vitality permeates throughout society. It is the religion itself. So we're going to get a different articulation of the religion coming from, just a general African concept or context, I should say. So this book by Laurenta Magessa, African Religion, The Moral Traditions of Abundant Life, 1998, pages 38 and 55. We must start from the life concepts of African clan society. Life, moyo, ashe, unk, inqua, etc., is so central that it must be characterized as sacred. God is understood as possessing life in its fullness. We've read this in other citations. God is life. And so we know what life is. It's perpetual motion of matter and other phenomena. It is existence itself. And so God is life, possessing life in its fullness and as the source of life. Humans have this inalienable responsibility for protecting and prolonging the life of the community in all its aspects, unquote. Morality is quite simply the determination of whether an action promotes or diminishes life. The Tanzanian theologian Loretta Magessa, my bad, this citation is from this, but this is the citation here. Lynn 2010, page 6 is this whole citation. But Lorenta Magessa's citation is this under here. So Lorenta Magessa sounds a very similar note. For African religion, all principles of morality and ethics are to be sought within the context of preserving human life and its power or force. Kimoyo, the sole purpose of existence, is to seek life, to see to it that human life continues and grows to its full capacity. So this is, we're starting to get some understanding of how all of this stuff relates. This in terms of this principle of life, this principle of Kimoyo or Moyo. The religion is Kimoyo, of vitalism, of how to recognize life, the principles of life, how to preserve it and transfer it to things. So the Kimoyo, in essence, really is the art of learning how to add life to life. This is what we are dealing with here. And so that is what Ma'at is. The study of the universe and the principal forces of life, the exchange, the ebb and flow, the forces in motion, and learning those principles of how the cosmos lives and exists, and to bring that into the community and to create social systems, economic systems that thrive on this principle of adding life to life. So something is immoral if it does not promote life in the African context. And so, as I stated, and I just keep advertising this, but we're going to have a discussion about developing an African American religion. And I have named it, just Bolingo or Molingo, meaning life and love. And, that'll come in, but this is cognate with the word ma'at. And so, actually, this slide should have been up a little earlier. Let me see. Kikongo, the Bayaji family, clan. Now I'll just skip this. That was supposed to be mentioned kind of earlier. And so when we're talking about religion, religion from the online etymological dictionary, excuse me, it is defined as a state of life bound to monastic vows, conduct indicating a belief in a divine power. Old French religion, piety, devotion, religious community, and directly from Latin religionem, respect for what is sacred, reverence for the gods, conscientiousness, sense of right, moral obligation, fear of the gods, divine service, religious observance, a religion, a faith, a mode of worship, cult, sanctity, holiness, etc. According to Cicero, derived from relegere, going through again. So read again, legere, to read. However, popular etymology among the later ancients and the interpretation of modern writers connects it with relegare, to bind fast, via notion of place and obligation on a bond between humans and gods. In that case, the re would be intensive. Another possible origin is religions, careful opposite of negligence. In English, meaning particular system of faith, is recorded from the 1300s, a sense of recognition of an allegiance and manner of life to a higher or unseen power or power. So this kind of definition that we have of the writers is at the bottom is relatively new, but is kind of on the line when we get into the etymology of the word. It's almost in alignment with what we see in Africa. But you'll hear certain folks when they talk about religion, meaning to bind back to God. That is not really the sense, even though it's not wholly inaccurate, however. But there's context for that. But when you're saying to bind back to God, that can only be within the Abrahamic traditions, because God is a separate entity from creation. But in the African context, God is existence. It is the evolution, and it is that which is evolving. So with that said, there is no separation. You can never be separate from God to bind back. And so for the Africans, the religion has to deal with the healing of community relationships, strengthening the bonds between humans and ancestors, the environment itself, and just all the totality. Is ma'at, is harmony, the balance between life itself and the individual. And so I think this book here, it has the perfect definition or articulation of what religion is outside of Foucault, who we cited earlier, in terms of God. Not God, of what religion is in the African context. So peace and thank you to Sarah Jehuti for your contribution. It is greatly appreciated. And I see your comment, and I look forward to your feedback and criticism and commentary on the book when you do get it. So thank you again. So this text here, African religion, that we cited earlier, or we saw a glimpse of it earlier from the other citation dealing with the principles of life from the other author. Now, you know, we're citing directly from her text. And it says, bondedness is the key to understanding that what falls on one falls on all. In such a relationship, the issue is the reestablishment of community. The religion, religare, this is what this literally means. And so this is why I don't take seriously when people have an issue with religion. They don't know what a religion is. Their only idea of a religion has to deal with Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But that's not what a religion is in the African context. You know, that's just the deification of their culture. You know, that's their economics, so to speak. But that's not what the religion is. So, and I'll just restart. Bondedness is the key to the understanding that what falls on one falls on all. In such a relationship, the issue is the reestablishment of community, the reestablishment of the circulation of life, so that life can go on transcending itself, go on bursting the barriers or the intervals, the nothingness, go on being super abundant. The ethical consequence is that we must repair every breach of harmony, every wound and lesion. We must demand reparation for ourselves because we are not merely ourselves, and for others because they are also ourselves. That what and who of our pre-existence and our survival, and the what or who of some manner of our presupposing ourselves. So we're talking about the interconnectedness. Let's go back to Foucault's thing here. So this is, remember what he says, the Bantu people see the health of an individual in the way that they see a pearl in a necklace or a link in a chain. When each element occupies perfectly its place, the whole unit, the society that this is a representation of, remains a dingo in a perfect and well-balanced motion. But there are forces, isfet in the ancient Egyptian context, that disrupts that flow, that exchange of life forces, that vitality. And so the Kimoyo, the religion, is that which reties these bonds, whether it's in just individual personal relationships or the society as a whole. But anything that happens to one person happens to all, because the whole society is interconnected. That's why in these traditional African societies, your personal relationship with you and your woman, if you're a male, or a woman, you know, with a man, if you're a female, it's not a personal relationship in total, because what goes on in your household affects the community. Because what you do in your house, and let's say that you have children, affects how they operate and how they behave in the society. So your personal relationships affects the society as a whole. And so that's why they can get involved in your relationships. Read Malidoma Some or Sobonfu Some's book that we cited earlier, The Spirit of Intimacy. So Ma'at, Jikinga, Dikongo, all of this, Kimoyo, Lunga, all of this is the repairing of these relationships to keep the flow, the ebb and flow of life forces going within personal relationships and society as a whole. That's what Ma'at is. That's what this here represents on a grander scale outside of the individual. And so when we talk about religion, this is how we have to see this. And so that's why, this series is Aaluja, is to create the religion, to create a process so that when something happens to disrupt the harmony and balance of things, we know the processes, the rules of engagement to Aaluja, to make, to provide, to retrace one's steps, to refer to a place of origin, to restore. In the Egyptian language, it is the word ruj, meaning to strengthen, to maintain, to perpetuate, to flourish, to be prosperous, success, enduring, permanent, sturdy, steadfastness, remain firm, firmness, consistency, to be strong, prevail over, competence, ability. And so Suruj is to make secure, to set right a wrong, to provide, to fulfill a contract, to restore, to repair, to make new again, to make grow, to make flourish. That's what religion is. It is the rules of engagement to restore, to put things back into balance, to strengthen, to add vitality back into a system that is in decline, to relationships that are diminished, that have been severed, that are in decline. So if you don't understand moyo and vitalism and spirit and what that means, then it's going to be hard to understand what the religion is. Kimoyo is this process, the process of restoring and strengthening and adding energy into the system. And so this concept of Kimoyo even permeates in our greetings with each other. So how African people even greet each other is filled with this concept of moyo, of ashe. And so this is from what I'm about to read here is a note that I wrote some years ago on my Facebook page. So you can find this on my Facebook, but this is something that I'll be adding, kind of revising a bit and adding to the Ma'at book that's coming in the future. So the article is called "A Power of Greeting." It's interesting, the West African philosophy of greeting someone in comparison to how we engage it typically in the United States. In ancient Egypt, the God component of man, that spark of energy directly connected to the greater spirit, is called, Ker or Ka, which in Twi is called Okra or Kla or Inkira, soul. And I've done plenty of lectures on this online, as well as, again, all this is discussed in Aaluja Volume 2. In Coptic, this is pronounced ki. In Java, Q. The front vowel causes a palatalization effect in the other African languages. In Igbo, it is pronounced chi, and may ultimately be connected to the concept of chi in Chinese. That's a hypothesis I have that has yet to be proven. A reflex of these words is also connected with greeting in African languages. Yoruba ki, greet or to visit, ki, eulogize or recite someone's pet name or his or her praise poems. In Twi is chia, greet. Kiswahili, amkia, to greet. The philosophy is that when we greet someone, we strengthen their chi. This concept is connected to potent speech. Enemies do not greet each other. In other words, they do not wish each other well. So, positive greetings enlivens others, therefore strengthens their spirit, their chi. This is we're talking about, again, this religion of Kimoyo, of vitality. When we greet each other, we're sending, symbolically here, vital force energy to enliven them, to strengthen them. We're sending them blessings ultimately. Among the Yoruba, ki is more effectively used to rouse in a person a recognition of his worth through a recapitulation of his ancestry and his achievements. These praise these praise poems are often called oriki. I should have gave an example in oriki, but these are praise poems that enliven the individual, that strengthens and empowers the individual by recognizing their value and their worth through the recapitulation of their ancestry and achievements. This is why we study the ancestors and we study history. It is to empower you. You know, it's silly when you hear folks talking about, you know, we have a feel good. We only study history to feel good and stuff. You damn right. We want to feel good because our value, part of our value, our intrinsic value, you know, and our inherited value that I discussed on yesterday comes as a result of knowing your history, knowing the great deeds that your ancestors have accomplished, knowing the great philosophies and insight and wisdoms that your ancestors have accumulated and passed on to you. It adds value to you. So this is why we have orikis in Yoruba tradition. And it's a type of greeting. So for those of you who are listening, I dare you to create an oriki for your spouse, your girlfriend, or husband. Greet them with an oriki and see how that empowers them during the day. Do it for your friends and for your parents. Do it for your children. See how that gives them a boost of confidence to take on the day and things by reminding them of who they are and their connection, not only to ancestors and their history, but their ancestry, their connection to God as a manifestation of power. So no one should ever feel down in, you know, around African people who's in their right mind, because we always remind each other of who we are. But I'll continue. So there's a phrase in Yoruba meaning to, you know, to encourage a person. They say ki la okan, which means the strengthening of the heart or strengthening his heart. To visit a person, so remember the word ki also means to visit. To visit a person is in Yoruba to go and ki him. This action brings good cheer and aids restoration to health by fortifying the spirit. It is a form of blessing. Blessings are potent speech. The word for spirit in most world languages is also the word for breath. Your speech is impossible without breath. Therefore, when we speak, we invoke life or death in others. We note this concept in the Bible as well. For life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so we can see Usher here greeting, you know, Barack Obama, but in that true brother fashion, you know, when we greet, is that matter of fact, when we greet, there has to be some level of strength and vitality. See when some brothers greet one another. We don't greet each other all timidly, like hell, you know, hello, sir, and just shake hands. You know, when we see our people, it's a you can hear that hard clap when the hands come, and you can hear like they chest colliding, because when we greet each other with strength. And when a sister greets one of her homegirls, it's not like, hey, how you doing? It's like, hey, and then they wilding out, dancing all in the circle or whatnot when they greet each other. When we greet each other with vitality, with ki.moyo. And so I continue. This is why when we greet each other with empowering words that invigorate and strengthen one's chi, one's spirit. To speak to someone is to send a spirit towards them. The person whom you are speaking with is being possessed by your words. To withdraw a greeting is to wish ill on someone. Therefore, greeting equals a blessing. It equals health. Not greeting someone equals a curse or a disease socially. This is why African people greet everyone in the room. This is still a religious practice for those of us who grew up down south. So, you know, in a black household, you bet not step 1 foot in that household and stay longer than 5 seconds without greeting everyone in the room. Everyone must be acknowledged. This is why we greet each other on the streets, even though we don't know each other, because we recognize the divine in the people. So we acknowledge each other everywhere we go. You know, because what we're doing, even when we just walking by and giving a head nod to somebody we don't know, just recognizing them as being Black people, you know, we're strengthening and we're recognizing them for who they are. And thank you to Amedix82 for your contribution. It is very much appreciated. Thank you. And so, you know, those of us who grew up in the South, you know, I live in Philly, but I'm from the South, and it is a religion, the way that we greet, and having to greet big mamas and everything to that nature. So I see the text, it says, but now you got a fist bump, elbow bump, because due to coronavirus. Yep, basically. So we got the new greeting is the Wakanda greeting. So everybody, when you see each other, you got to greet each other doing the Wakanda greeting with your arms crossed on your chest. And quiet is kept. That is not a greeting that was made up for the movie. That's actually how they greet in the Congo. That is an actual greeting. That's how they greet in Congo. So you can go back and tap into your African Congo-ness and do the Wakanda greeting. But anyway, so continuing along these lines of the greetings, there's an article written by Rune Fleek, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it's called Writing Nature Cultures in Zulu Zionist Healing. In a study of Bantu healing rituals, Johnson sheds light on this when he argued that conceptions of health are captured in the notion of leading a balanced life. In Zulu, the root lunga, remember we were introduced to this earlier, ma'at, used in greetings, wishing people health and well-being, include the notion of balance and harmony with the natural and social environment. To reestablish harmony and balance is thus a goal of the healing process. In order to achieve this, the rituals focused on the manipulation of places and relations to living and departed relatives to achieve healing. So this root in Zulu, lunga, and this is actually in Congo as well. And so in Aaluja Volume 2, I cite another citation that acknowledges both the Zulu and the Ki-Congo root here, lunga, that is used as a greeting, because it's dealing with health and balance and well-being. So when they greet each other, we're wishing each other good health and well-being, vitality, moyo. So as we said again, the word moyo in Chiluba is moyo or moyi, which means heart, life, spirit, soul, courage, will, desire, inclination, feeling, mood, thought, greeting. Hello. So what are we doing here? If we're greeting each other with moyo, what we're doing is we are sending blessings to the person in the form of life and vitality. So we're strengthening their chi. We're strengthening their ka. We're sending ashe to people. We're enlivening them. We're vitalizing them. This is what the ritual of greeting. So when we just don't say hello as something empty, you know, this is what all of this means. And so I want to do a little linguistics right here. So this is what I'm about to say here is in chapter 2. I want to say chapter 2 on Seneb. So, you know, Seneb is the word for health. And so remember this quote here. Lunga, using greetings, wishing people health and well-being, included the notion of balance and harmony with the natural and social environment. So again, moyo, all of this having to deal with harmony, the exchange of life forces, and being in balance with all of that. So as I discussed in the text, the word neb is cognate with the word lim or lam in Bantu or dam. And it actually is cognate with lungu, but that's a whole different set of, and I don't want to make this presentation too long, but so we can see here, this PGLB means Proto Great Lakes Bantu. And so Neb, creator, builder, lim, create, string or bowl, Neb, a plant, Lama, Combretum species, which is a plant, Neb, to protect, Lam, to look after and protect, Nebiu, protector, Neb, lord, master, owner, Lem, rule, govern, dominate, Nebet, lordship, authority of a king, Seneb, be healthy, health, to heal, Lamu, good health, life, longevity. And so we know that the word Seneb actually has an S prefix on the Neb root. And so the sound correspondences are here. And so I proved this in the actual Egyptian language. So we have Neber, to tie, to wind up, to unwind, Seneb, cord, twine, Nebu, creator, builder, Seneb, to build, Nibi, artist, creator, Nebu or Nibwa, a wooden device, Senebwi, a part of a boat. And you know, the boats were made out of wood. Nebu, a plant, Seneb, a plant, Nebheh, a plant, Seneb, a fruit tree and its fruit, Nebhi, a plant associated with Osiris, Senebu, fruit of the Seneb tree, Senebu, grass, with Neb, flower, blossom. So just showing that this Neb root has these prefixes. So Seneb is a prefix plus Neb, or Nab, or Nib, you know, whatever the vowels were in ancient Egyptian. So this is, you know, a little bit of linguistics here. So we also have, so now that I have proven, you know, as a result of Proto-Great Lakes Bantu, that Neb of Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, equals Lim Alam, so the LM consonant sequence in Bantu, we go to this set of correspondences here. Proto-Great Lakes Bantu, Lama, which means to speak last wishes, say powerful words, to honor, to activate a medicine, to invoke a social tie. It is a greeting, Lama, Neb. Ganda, in the Ganda language, Lama, make will, die disposition, leave a legacy, to promise. Lama, cry out, implore, insist. Lama, testify, leave something to somebody, implore, recommend, promise. In Nkore, Rami Amahimbe, speak magic words. Ramiza, worship at or in. Ramya, pay homage to, superior, worship. Nkore, Kiga, Ramya, worship. Hava, to thank, give honor to by clapping. So I'm saying all of this to say that when they're greeting, this is exactly what they're doing. They're speaking magic words to each other. They're paying homage. They're worshiping each other. They're thanking. They're giving honor. Kula Musa, to salute, to greet. Kuramya, to salute a king by clapping hands. To recite a ritual formula in addressing oneself. Okulamya, in the Kwaya language, to honor, to greet. All from this root here from Proto-Great Lakes Bantu. Lama, to speak last wishes, to say powerful words, to honor, to activate a medicine. So remember what I talked about earlier in terms of when we're engaging these natural forces in the rocks and the rivers, we're trying to activate something in it to work on our behalf. And then when we're speaking to each other, we're invoking a social tie. You know, so hold on one sec. So for those familiar with the greetings of the king in ancient Egypt, you know, you have this word Ankh Wuja Seneb, which means life for Ankh, Wuja prosperity, Seneb health. in Aaluja Volume 2, I demonstrate that all three of these are dialectical variations of the same word itself. And so this is this word Seneb and Uja Seneb. This is a salutation to the king. So you wish the king life, prosperity, and health. And so you have, with at least with this word Seneb, or Neb or Lam or Ram, in the higher language you have Kurama. Ku is the infinitive prefix, meaning to do something. So Kurama, to live long of the king, and Ziba Ramya, pay homage to the king. So we're using the same words to give acknowledgement to the king. So I go through all of that to say, to prove this point that Neb and Lam are cognates, because as we see here, Lam is a greeting in the Bantu languages, and it is so is also in Egyptian. So Neb, it's a gemination here, a partial reduplication. It's supposed to be like Neb Neb, means greetings, Seneb Deb or Seneb Beb, to exchange greetings. And then when the B sound is intervocalic, it weakens and becomes W. So Niwi, a gesture of greeting. And as I discuss in the text, the K sound corresponds to the labial sounds B, P, M, and W in the language. So this Inkwi is another variation of this word, welcome. And so to prove that the K sound here is cognate with the B's, I show these correspondences here at the bottom. So nek, massacre, massacre to butcher. Cheneb, slaughter. Nek, to protect, to help. Neb, to protect. Nekhi, a snake. Nebet, to coil. Nebedet, a dice snake. You'll see all throughout Aaluja Volume 2 that I'll show you that the words for snakes in African languages derives from many different words, but primarily words meaning to coil, because you see snakes coil, or to propagate, motion, to run. And then Nekenet, a bird, and this is a partial reduplication as well, and Ineb, a bird. So we can see here that this K corresponds to B in Egyptian. So this is going to be very important, because the word Seneb, as I told you, in this greeting here, Unk, Uja Seneb, which is a greeting meaning health, is cognate with the word Unk. So let's prove it. So we have Unk here. And so where you see this, I have it separated in colors. So we just proved here that Nek and Neb are cognates with each other. These are different dialectical variations of the same word. So when we see here Seneb, we know the S is a prefix. And so the H or the E in Unk is a prefix. And so the prefixes I have colored in red, and the root I have colored in blue. So life, Unk. Seneb, air, breath. Unk, live, to be alive. Seneb, be alive. Unket, fire. Seneb, to burn. Unk, garland, which is a type of plant. Seneb, plant. Unk, sandal strap. Seneb, cord, twine. And the word Unk also had to deal with rope. That's why it's a word for captive, meaning to tie and things of that nature. And so Unk, a container in the shape of a hieroglyph. Senebet, a jar. Unk, the inundation. Neb, bring forth the inundation. Unket, eye of God. Weneb, part of the eye. So it's only by doing these types of comparisons that you can get a better understanding. So if Seneb is an exchange of greeting, it is part of that African tradition of Kimoyo, of exchanging greetings, to vivify people, to add life, because Seneb also means air, breath, to be alive, to add life to the other person. So what you're doing when you greet the king by saying Unk Uja Seneb, you're in vivifying him. Because in Africa, period, the kings are supposed to be the personification of power and energy, which is why in the hedge festivals and things of this nature, where the king had to revitalize his energy, show the public that they were capable of ruling. You know, in ancient days, they used to put the king to death if he was not able to rule because of a physical ailment. And so the logic behind that was that, well, he must not be in harmony with the universe and things of that nature. So there's something wrong. He's out of balance. He's out of order, and we can't have somebody who leads us who is sickly and maimed, and or either too old. And so they would kill the king so many years, and then put in a new king. So of course, when that was going around, nobody wanted to be king. You know, that was just a sacrifice that you had to make. But then as time progressed, they just started doing it ritually. Even in ancient Egypt, they would ritually kill the king, you know, to add new life, to add vitality. And so this may be the underlying of even the Christ thing. You know, in order to do, you have to be put through a ritual death and be renewed again, you know, and as we would say, be born again. And so Seneb is a dialectical variation of the word Ankh. And as we saw, the word Ankh itself finds its way into Proto-Indo-European and evolves ultimately into the word vitality in English, you know, as we borrowed the root from the Latin languages and French. So it all comes full circle. So we brought our religion and principal concepts out of Africa into the Middle East and into Europe. And so lastly, and hope to wrap this up real quick, is that the concept of vitality is even in Kimoyo is even present in the grammar of the languages. And so it is personified as this prefix of agent, this ngwe that we see here, this reconstruction. It's a proto-lexeme ngwe, meaning human being or life, is used in certain proto-lexemes to designate any animated being or perceived as such, and thus becomes the agent prefix. And so this ngwe manifests itself primarily in three forms: I, the mid-central vowel, the W, wa, or ng, as in sing. And so this is the prefix of agent in, or the agent affix, I should say, in these languages. And so this comes from Mboli's work. And so we see in as a prefix, it is a prefix of N and W in Egyptian. But as a copula, meaning to be, is NW or EW. And then as a suffix, it is either 0 or W or the Y or the double I. He writes it as a double I, but it's the Y in Egyptian. And so in Coptic, we see it here. In Songo, we see the same. So Na and Ma. And same thing in Bantu as well. It'll be N or M sound. But they all had the same copula, meaning to be, to exist. And so this ties into the religion itself. And so remember that this word means human being. So that's become the gwe that we saw earlier. Inkwa, life, human being. And so from this concept of being and to be, it became a part of the grammar to talk about things that have agency. That's why we call it the prefix of agent. And so it first starts off with animals and human beings and even spirits, but then it started being attached to things that aren't what we would consider to be animate. And so but it's there nonetheless. And so even in the word unk, that's what that is. It's the prefix of agent as far as the unk sound. So this word unk is really this root here, with which is the qua or que, with the prefix of agent unk, with another prefix here, which in some of these could be a prefix of agent, but it's actually a noun class prefix that I discussed in the text. So getting back here, so we could see, like in Egyptian, this word chet, meaning wood, and it's actually another one meaning arm or whatnot. But branch, it comes from wood, and then branch, which becomes a word for arm, and strong in ket. So set meaning seat or place, inset meaning throne, hedge white or shiny, in hedget tooth, belly or child, and then young, small, inqua, geber, arm, and then neb, owner or master. And but this is, there's some explaining that has to be done, which I'll do at a later time for that. And even the chur, as I discussed in Aaluja Volume 2, is a word meaning power. And then the prefix of agent in netcher is God, spirit. And so we see this in Proto-Bantu, power, and Chiluba in Kole, God. And so in Chiluba in Kole or in Kola, God is the powerful one, the agent of power, the one who can make things happen. And so we have other prefixes of agent. So we see this prefix of agent for arrow, because when you shoot an arrow, it has animation. Hachim, image, because an image represents a person or a thing. And so it has the vitality of that. Haksha, a lot, and hikwer, a rope, because a rope, has tension, and it does stuff. It holds things together. So it has some sense of agency for those, in the early periods who thought that. And so you see it in Wolof. So lek, to eat, in deki, breakfast, deck, river, and ducks, water, and jek, first, inject, to proceed or precede, and so it is manifested itself that in these languages. But lastly, these prefix. So remember that the nature itself, because as I show in the text, in Kole or whatnot, or called power, is a word for a human being as well. So a powerful person or an eminent person. So we saw earlier that human beings are the manifestation of power. And so they are netures. Like all human beings, all things are netures. And so you see this manifest even in the Egyptian language, that this concept of Kimoyo. And so you have here, and normally I would have these at the end, but I switched the hieroglyphs around so you can see the necher symbol, which is a seated man with a beard. And that, it is associated with things that are also not quote unquote deities. So, a head word, which is a full moon, which is a festival, but the festival is deified. Nekhen, to the injuring, it is also has a deity at the end of the word. Sebeg, which is a planet, also has a deity. Sejem, meaning hearing, it also is a deity. Kemet, which is a black cow, it also is a deity. Chihini, which means shiny, because shining, it has agency. Again, it does something. It has motion. Therefore, it has, this agent, graphical representation. So this is what ultimately, when you see these necher symbols, these are symbols meaning agency. So something that has agency that is believed to have a particular type of spirit that gives it its agency, that gives it its characteristics. And so to be angry is divine. It is seen as a spirit. And so, this is how all of this comes into the grammar and even into the representation in terms of this concept of Kimoyo. So I end, the presentation. I had 74 slides we went through. And I appreciate you all for being patient with me and for sticking with me these long hours. It's about to be 12 on the East Coast, 12 a.m. And so, again, thank you all for listening. If any of you have any questions, this would be the time to ask in the chat. As usual, I guess I can go a little bit longer. So if anybody wants to join the conversation and say what's on your mind, here's the link in the chat. So exactly. So I know it's going to be a second for anybody to develop a question, or type in a question, or if they feel like joining the panel, for them to come on. Thank you all again for listening, and for everyone who is joined into the chat. So please share this video if you have not joined or subscribed to this page. Please subscribe and hit the bell so that you can get the notifications when I have a show, and we can keep the conversation going. And so let me see, the chi part sparked a question for me. How would you compare and contrast the concept of Qilunga to the Chinese yin yang concept? I would say pretty much that they're really kind of the same, conceptually wise, in terms of yin yang. That's what it's saying. The yin yang is that everything has, they use the language of, the opposites, the darkness and the light, so to speak, and the little circles, saying that everything has. So if you see the dark side, it has light in it, and then if you see the light side, you'll see a dark circle in it, and saying that everything encompasses this, and that this, you can see their circle kind of looking like it's in motion. And so I would have to read up a little bit more on that. I haven't dealt with yin yang in a serious sense in a long while. But that is something to look in. But if their symbol represents, kind of energy and motion, if we want to say that, then it would be very much like what we see in terms of the Dikinga in the Congo. So that's a great question. It's something I will look into as a result of your question. And we have joined with us on the panel. He decided to come in, Brother Wujawu. Peace and blessings, good brother.
Hey, peace and blessings. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, peace and blessings. Yeah, I just want to come in. I was listening to the presentation, and man, that's an excellent presentation. And I don't want to talk too long because I don't think that this should be made too long, because I think everyone should watch this presentation because it gives a very, very good representation from an African perspective of what religion is, and basically everything that you broke down. But I just want to say that was an excellent presentation. I did have a question / comment when you were talking about vitality and how it even comes over into the way that we greet each other, and how we greeting each other with life, and we're trying to live in people even in our greeting. And I noticed that or you didn't bring this up, but the very word hotep, meaning
Hmm.
offering of some food and things.
Yep.
The notion of replenishing someone's vitality with some food or some substance when they come and visit you, or when they leave you, you want to leave them with a a to-go box when they're on their journey and things like that, and
Yep.
how we use that today as a greeting. So I just thought that was interesting. But like I said, it's a lot that you
Yeah.
covered. But I think people should really, really watch it more than once with a notepad, because this is a paradigm shift with people's ideals of religion, and using the word religion in a pejorative way just
Hmm.
because of the Abrahamic view of religion. Religion has become synonymous with spooky or silliness or stupidity, as opposed to everything that you covered tonight. So just wanted to point those things out.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Just reminds me of, again, I mentioned Ma'at a number of times throughout this discourse. And as I have come to the conclusion, as articulated in Aaluja Volume 2, Chapter 1, on the etymology of the word Ma'at, is that the word Ma'at, dealing with offering. So you brought up Hotep. So that's a different word for the actually kind of the same concept in terms of offerings, in terms of food. And so that the word Ma'at, ultimately in that kind of variation, not the one dealing with truth, but in terms of offering, it is a word that derives from a root meaning to give food, to exchange food. And it's from this notion of the exchange of food, which is the life forces of life, that the whole religion and paradigm emerges. All of this, the whole religion is Ma'at of ancient Egypt. That is the religion. And it is about the exchange of life forces, the exchange of goods, to make sure that everybody is healthy and upbeat. Because Africans understand life simply as this: ebb and flow. And while your fellow man may be on this decline at the current moment, I may be up here. So, in the earliest of human evolution, we didn't have jobs and cars and needed gas money or anything to that nature. What the caring concern was your health and food. And did you have access to food? And so if I'm, up here in terms of my stash, I see you and make sure that you have. So now it helps to bring us up in balance in the society and keeps the flow of everything going. And so life is about this ebb and flow. And so we exchange the life forces so that we enliven and vivify those who are in the stage of decline. And so we know it takes a lot of energy, for example, even to travel, especially in the olden days when we didn't have cars. It would take a lot of physical energy and exhaustion when we would go visit people from other villages or in other states. So when you come, the first thing that I do is I offer you something to drink and to eat, so that you can replenish yourself from your long journey. So nothing else happens in the meeting before I know that you are replenished, that you are vivified as a result of me giving you food. This is Ma'at. And it's from this notion. And remember what I said earlier about the repairing of relationships, why you give offerings to deities and ancestors. Because we believed that the ancestors and the deities can cause harm or imbalance in the society if we have done wrong by them. So since they are part of our family and part of the community, the same way that I would break bread with my fellow man because I have wronged them, as a way of reconciling a rift because of some action or behavior, I do the same thing with deities. So I offer them food because that's our logic. That's how we help to mend relationships. So if you ever like get into a situation with your significant other, either make them a great meal or take them out to eat and apologize. It's hard for people to be angry at you when you're feeding them something good. So this is just a life lesson for those of you who are listening.
Hey, I want to read one of the 7 criterias of life. Right.
Uh-huh.
This is in the bio, I guess the microbiology domain.
Okay.
And so there's 7 criteria for something to be considered living or alive. All right. And 7 of them. I'm gonna read one.
Uh-huh.
It says living things must maintain homeostasis. And that's like what you're talking about, balancement. It says homeostasis is all about balance. Can something control its internal temperature or its internal contents? And it goes on, but I wanted to kind of just leave it there because life, even according to our modern definitions, 1 out of the 7 criteria is that something has to be in balance, and that's what you were speaking about with the ebb and flow and the wave, the valley and the trough of the wave and everything. It's about homeostasis. So feeding someone, you're actually putting them back into a balanced state that they were once in before they even made the trip, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was interesting.
Exactly. And so by even just on the greeting level, we're symbolically sending life, ritually. Like greeting is a ritual in Africa. And so the ritual greeting, saying moyo is it's almost like if we can imagine, like what was that game Street Fighter and the Hayukit, the fireball, coming out of the, did they say how you get on that, or was it when it was punching from the video game? I don't remember, but like if you could just imagine that ball of fire and energy, going into the other person. That's kind of the visual that you are to get when you greet someone. You're sending waves and radiations to the other person. It's supposed to jolt them and enliven them. And you can just imagine, just think about, for example, somebody who you admire and love. Say you haven't seen them in a while and you are at a social event and you see them come through the door. Their presence enlivens you. Just them being there, gives you this sense of joy, like this gives you this boost of energy because this is someone whom you love and respect, and y'all know when y'all get together, it's on and popping. And so we, in that meiotic tradition, that's who we strive to be. That kind of person that just the very essence, without even saying a word, someone sees you from across the way and they just get excited and happy. Your presence gives them life. And this is what we strive. So this is part of the Kimoyo, the religion of vitality, that we state. So I want to go back a bit. Soul L said or asked, Asar, given everything you have just logically demonstrated, can Europeans claim this knowledge? If you can and you're listening, can you retype it and say exactly, or just expound on it in terms of what you mean by can Europeans claim it? Can they claim it as they originated the ideas, or can they claim it in terms of internalize it and use it in their life? Which one do you mean? And so I'm gonna go down. Just random comments. SK said God created the vital forces in all life by combining in a bisymmetric manner the vital force of fire and water as prescribed in the book of life. Theophilo being a 1990. That's a good quote. He said, Yeah, it's a jumping uppercut. So I think it's just a Hayuki is a jumping uppercut, but I don't know if the fireball, if they ever say anything with that. I haven't played that since the civil rights movement. Um, but I'm not seeing any other questions. And I'm kind of scrolling up, and I'm waiting for Soul L to respond. Any human can understand it if they are competent. I'm gonna see. I'm just gonna wait a second to see if he responds. But do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually reading through the the 7 criterias for life, or what would be viewed as life, and I have to say, man, about all 7 kind of touch on in some way, some form of fashion of the things you discussed tonight. I'm just gonna read the headline for each of the 7. The first.
Hold on. Are you reading online, or you have a book in your hand?
I'm reading online. If you want to, the link.
Yeah, I was about to say, share it if you can share your screen. That's what I was going to ask.
Okay, I'll give you the link. You can share it, because I don't think I'm able to share it right now.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. How can I get it to you?
If you're in the chat, just put it in the chat.
Okay.
And
do that in the on YouTube chat. Yeah, just pull it up. Now, what's interesting is that this was I had read this to some people I had a discussion with recently about the coronavirus, and there was a argument.
Oh, darn it.
There was an argument about whether or not viruses are alive, and so I pointed out what is considered living or alive. You know, and so that's where this link is coming from. But it's universal 7 requirement for things to be considered living or alive. And so I put it in the chat.
Hold on. I can't access it in the chat, because when I click on it, it makes it come up on the screen. It just shows the yeah. So I'm just going to go through YouTube and click on the link from
the YouTube. Okay.
YouTube, yeah, and then we'll get it.
Yeah, but that's the context of why this particular link that I'm sharing this particular link, but you can find it in several different books. But it's part of a conversation I had 2 days ago about whether or not viruses are alive and things like that. It's just interesting, you know. I'm just relating to your conversation
when I click
because I think you have your YouTube audio on.
There we go.
So yeah, so as you were talking tonight, it just reminded me back of the conversation I had just 2 days ago, with this, and it's just interesting that, you know, I guess when you pull it up, you can share it. But number one was
it's I don't see any details. Okay, here we go. Wait. Okay. It's still pulling up.
Okay, yeah, you see number 1.
Yeah. At first it didn't have anything, but now I see. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna pick a Chrome tab and viruses data live. So boom.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me make sure that it's big in screen. Let me go back. So boom. Okay. So how can I make this bigger? I'll do that.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay. So I want to make sure that everybody can read it. So, if life were a monster movie, would viruses be vampires or zombies? Werewolves or Frankenstein's monsters? Would they be something else entirely? The first step in answering these questions come down to, are viruses alive or dead? How do we determine whether something is alive? Let's compare viruses to 7 criteria researchers have set to determine if something is alive. Okay, so now.
Yeah, so it's kind of detailed, but I was just reading the headings of each one. And so
Hmm.
the first one I mentioned earlier, living things must maintain homeostasis, and these kind of tie into your conversation tonight, at least the tail
Hmm.
end part. And I just found that interesting about balancement. And then living things have different levels of organization, which is what you show with the cosmogram, or what the even word cosmogram is. It's about organizing, and having this system. So you have different levels. So you have the human, the person, and then their relationship with their next fellow man, and then the social or the community, and then their environment and the cosmos. All those kinds of things. Smaller building blocks coming together to make a larger product. But now, like I said, this site is
Hmm.
focused on viruses though. But if you take it out of that context, um, it's the same thing. Living things reproduce. And
Hmm.
you had mentioned tonight that the morality from an African perspective is something or things that promote or produce life and not destroy it. That's like the basis for
Hmm.
moral fabric of that. And so living things, of course, reproduce. It doesn't just, it's promote life and things. Living things grow. You mentioned tonight, there's no such thing as creation. There's it's always this vital force that's permeating, and how religion is your participation in it. Like
Hmm.
you said about dancing and participating in it and growing. And so then living things use energy. I mean, if you go through it, it's the same. Everything that you said, living things respond to stimuli, you know, um, on the other end. Um, and then the last one, 7, living things adapt to their environment. Bingo. So you got
Hmm.
different communities do things to adapt to their circumstances, their environment, to actually promote life. Because if they don't, they'll be extinct. They'll die.
Exactly.
Simple as that. So I just thought that was interesting. I had a conversation using this site 2 days ago, but I was focused on viruses though. But it relates to what you were saying, and it's just interesting.
Indeed. Yeah, that's I mean that's pretty much it. Is understanding what life is, and as I discussed in Aaluja Volume 2, is the objective of the sage in African wisdom traditions is the understanding of life and how to tower over life's challenges. In order to do that, you must understand, of course, the principles of life and the motivations behind change, or Keper, if we want to personify it from an Egyptian perspective. Is what is those motivations that cause things to move and change in the direction that they do? And what effects will those types of changes have on the individual, on the family, on the community, on the environment, on the earth, et cetera, et cetera? And it is this understanding of the how things change and what is exchanged in the process and what disrupts that harmony, in preparation for a new harmony. And so, as I always say, evolution is really the basis of African religion. That's the process. So vitality, energy, power, etc., is the underlying thing, but it's evolution, Kepper, which is the basis. It is what causes things to change and evolve. How do they evolve, and what must we do to be in harmony through life's evolutions, its ebbs and flows?
Yep. And I
And
can't help but to think about that's what I'm saying. This presentation, and I'm a cut it because I probably cause you to talk longer. I think people need to watch it several times because it will reorientate our paradigm. Because I think we're doing a lot of arguing, swimming in a totally different paradigm that's not, the
yeah.
same. you know, if people were to understand this, I think it would just really eliminate a lot of things that people are trying to argue and go back and forth with, because it's really plain and simple when you slow things down and you go through, you know, the things that you explain and just look at it from that perspective. There's really nothing to argue. Not really nothing to argue. You know, life itself, we say God is existence itself. You know, it's infinite, eternal change. It's change is the only thing that's constant, and your our participation in it is obligatory. Like, we can't do anything about it
at all.
at all. We are participating in it. We embrace it. That's our religion. That's our
Yeah. It's our understanding of change.
Right. So yeah, but anyways, but yeah, good presentation. I'm not gonna cause you longest thing out. So yeah, good presentation.
Thank you very much for coming on, and thank you all, the listeners. I don't see any more questions or comments. So, you know, as usual, be safe in these quarantine streets, and you know, take this opportunity to learn something new, develop a new skill. If you have any business ideas, kind of organize yourself, make some new plans, see how you can solve certain people's problems even during this time of crisis. You know, use this time, or see this time, this hard time, as an opportunity for growth and change. So put these principles that we have learned today to work, and you'll see that, you know, it's understanding we're going through an ebb moment right now. And so, you know, but what is it going to take to bring us back into harmony and balance? And so, you know, in this decline, there is opportunity to be able to solve people's problems. And, you know, the exchange of funds, the exchange of money will allow us to revivify ourselves in these times. And so, again, you know, a lot of this is discussed in Aaluja Volume 2. So if you have it, you know, I know, you know, it's a thick book, so some of y'all are just kind of, you know, a third or maybe halfway, you know, through the text if you've been reading diligently. And, you know, for others who intend to get it, you know, all of this and more is in the text. So, you know, read my citation, see my analysis and synthesis of the data, and then go and you know, read the source material for, you know, even greater expansion, you know, than from what I cited. And, you know, the pieces of the puzzles will start to come together for you in understanding who we are and what we need to do in terms of moving forward. So I appreciate, again, everyone for listening, everyone in the archive. And as I said, by tomorrow morning, Dr. Fukiao's PhD dissertation is going to be in the description box. So right under the description, you'll see download link to Fukiao or something like that. And, you know, you can download it from my website. So I will see you next time. And so I won't be doing a presentation. Well, I don't plan on doing a presentation next week, because I'm going to be working on doing a presentation on Afroasiatic and why Afroasiatic is not a legitimate language categorization label, so to speak. And so it's going to be 3 lectures in a row. So I'll be doing them, you know, let's say a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday or something like that. So in that, when I'm setting up to do all 3 of those, so I want, you know, all my focus is going to be on those lectures. So I don't plan on, I may do an interview or something like that, but in terms of me doing a show, in terms of where I prepare something like this, you know, we're going to do something a little different. So that should come up within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So I look forward to that, and I'll give y'all a heads up for when that happens. And y'all be safe, and good night. Peace.